Good afternoon, Baton Rouge and surrounding areas. Welcome to the broadcast services of the Greater First Church Baptist, where Reverend Anthony Kelley is our organizer, pastor, and teacher. We're so excited you tuned in today for this praise and worship celebration as we continue in this new direction in Christian ministry.
Greetings, my brothers and sisters in Christ. I thank God for another expression of His love and His kindness that He has allowed us to be able to greet you once again. We pray that all is well with you and your family and your ministries, and that you are continuing to pray, you're continuing to make plans to be safe, and of course you are persevering. We here at the Greater First Church Baptist, located in Baker, Louisiana, just north Baton Rouge, are thankful for your continued prayers, for your participation in our ministries, our online ministries, our intercessory prayer ministries from various parts of the nation. We just thank you so much for also knowing that prayer can change things. And not only does prayer change things, but we believe that prayer can change people. And then people can change some things. We do want to encourage you to check out our website. We have the publications. We have several books that are there for your use in your ministries. The one on my right is called How Shall They Hear? Tremendous training piece for those of you who are engaged in prison ministry, in particular in ministering to prisoners, ex-prisoners, their families, returning citizens, to children, and so forth. And on my left, we have another treatise that raises the concern of what the Spirit of God is saying to the church, especially in these days, and particularly to the church in the black experience. I say that in particular, but all churches in general. So please check out our website and the publications and the resources that we have available for you. We do want to again thank the many churches that are helping other churches. You know, there are some churches with the best who are required to help the rest. And we thank God for those who are reaching out and helping our churches to move forward in their ministries during this challenging time. We know that our members are not operating in a vacuum. Our churches are comprised of people who are unemployed, people who are struggling as well. And we need all of you to be praying for our churches. And if God puts it upon your heart to help the Greater First Church, we ask you also, you can mail in your donation at the address on the screen in Baker, or of course you can make your donation, your seed offering, if you will, online. And again, we just thank you for your continued prayers and your perseverance. Amen. There is a word from the Lord that I want to share with you today as I seek to hear God speaking to my heart in terms of what I need or should be sharing with you tonight. And I want to call your attention to the book of Jeremiah. In the Old Testament, Jeremiah chapter 8 and verse 22. That's Jeremiah chapter 8 and verse 22. And again, reading from the English Standard Version of the Bible, let us go to Jeremiah. And Jeremiah in that 8th chapter in the 22nd verse says, "Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of the daughter of my people not been restored?" He raises these two rhetorical questions. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then has the health of the daughter of my people not been restored? Amen. And I want to talk to you today from this thought: spiritual healing. What an extraordinary word from Jeremiah, as he serves as one of the great prophets of God in sharing the word from the Lord that will help his people. And when you look at this text, you understand that Gilead, this country, Gilead produced a medicinal balm noted for its curative powers. It had powers to cure. This salve, this balm that they had in Gilead, celebrated for healing properties and often used for cosmetic purposes. It was used also to symbolize deliverance from national distress as presented in our text. Scholars of antiquity have it that it was probably an aromatic gum or spice from a plant that grew near Gilead. Oh yes, people traveled from all over the world to procure it, to buy it, to purchase it. They exported it also to Egypt. And when you look at Genesis, the 37th chapter, and the 25th verse, you can see this very clearly. When brothers schemed to sell their brother Joseph into slavery, you hear these words in verse 25 of Genesis 37. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels carrying gum, balm, and resin on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Not only to Egypt, but they also exported it to the city of Tyre, which Ezekiel had a very prolific statement he makes in Ezekiel chapter 27 and verse 17. Ezekiel in 27 and 17 says, Judah and the land of Israel traded with you, speaking of Tyre. They exchanged for your merchandise wheat for minneth, millet, honey, oil, and balm. Oh yes, Israel's sickness, however, could not be cured by any medicine. For its problem was spiritual and not physical. Jeremiah, in our text in chapter 8, is speaking from the second of his three indictments posed against Judah as presented from his great temple sermon, which he began in chapter 7. Oh yes, he reminds God's people that God did not reject them without first using every proper means to reform them. They now had reached the point of no return, according to Jeremiah, and their relationship with God, as described, was like rejected silver. Can you imagine silver being rejected? Something of worth, something so beautiful. But Jeremiah puts it in these terms as relates to Judah's relationship to God. It says, I have made you a tester and a refiner among my people, so that you may know and test their ways. They are all stubbornly rebellious, going about with slanders. They are bronze and iron. All of them act corruptly. The bellows blow fiercely. The lead is consumed by the fire. In vain the refining goes on, for the wicked are not removed. They are called rejected silver, for the Lord had rejected them. And again, that's Jeremiah indicating how God indeed rejects that which is unrighteous, and how he stands ready to receive those who are indeed repentant. But one way God revealed his message to his people, as you know, as Bible students, was through the ministry of the prophets. Oh yes, the prophet as the priest, as the preacher, has several responsibilities. On the one hand, we have a priestly responsibility. That is, we take the concerns of the people and we bring them and lift them before God. That's our priestly function. But then there's the prophetic function. And that is when the prophet speaks to the people on behalf of God. And that's why you always hear the prophet saying, to justify his preaching, to let you know it's not from him. But the prophet says always the phrase, thus says the Lord God. Can I get a witness? It appears throughout the Old Testament. Jeremiah, for example, frequently used this phrase as a means to certify that the message was God's message and not his own. And so here the prophet stands in the temple giving indictments to Judah as to why they must be scattered and exiled. And you know, all of that is because of disobedience. Going into captivity, both Israel and Judah, was because of their disobedience to the word and to the will of their Lord God. For you remember in the Old Testament, there was this special relationship that God had with his people. It was the covenant formula found in Deuteronomy that says, I shall be your God. And on the other hand, you shall be my people. And according to Jeremiah 7:24 and following, three things need to be considered. First, Judah refused to learn anything from experience. They kept on disobeying. They kept on refusing to follow the will and the way of their Lord. Secondly, they set their own will against God's will. Just like many of us, oftentimes we forget and we don't understand that our arms are too short to try to box with our Almighty God. Thirdly, they spurn the law of God. And my brothers and my sisters, we know that you can only know the way by knowing what the Word of God says. We get our guidance, we get our direction, we get our sense of meaning and purpose from the Word of the Lord. And then also, let me add, fourthly, they walked in their own counsels. This is according to Jeremiah 7:24. And I'm excited, brothers and sisters, that at the Greater First Church, we're in the midst of a Bible study every Thursday evening in our weekly worship, and we're studying the letter of James. And James, in that third chapter, verses 15 through 18, really makes a distinction between worldly or humanity's wisdom and the wisdom that comes from God. And this is what James, the Lord's brother, says. He says, this is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exists, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom that comes from God, good God Almighty, the wisdom that comes from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial, and sincere. And James ends that characterization of God's wisdom by saying, and a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace, unquote. And so we see here that the people of God in the text looked backward rather than forward. And we got to understand, brothers and sisters, that yesterday is in the tomb of time. And tomorrow, no doubt, is in the womb of time. In short, they said they would obey God, and then they did the opposite. And so God sent his prophets to warn them. And he also sent them to threaten them. But they were as deaf to the prophets as they were to the law and to the will of God. And thus God's judgment fell on them. When you get to chapter 8 in Jeremiah, Jeremiah specifies how awful the destructive judgment of God would be for this wicked people. But he also shows that the judgment of God was always righteous. In fact, the God of holiness and love is also the God of justice and judgment. And especially for those who sin against his tremendous holiness and spurns his steadfast love. Martin Luther King Jr. and those who followed knew this about the attributes of God as righteous indignation. That is, that God's holiness demands that he must address, deal with, and correct wrong wherever and whenever it occurs. And when he does, and with whatever measure and instruments he uses, God will always be just. Oh yes, in my grandma Tress's theology, she would say God has the right to hate wrong. That God has the right to denounce injustice. God has the right to reject racism. That God has the right to reclaim the repentant. God has the right to restore the prodigal. That God has the right to reconcile even the rejected. Oh yes, my brothers and my sisters, subsequently, whatever God hates, his church ought to hate. Whatever God rejects, his church ought to reject. Whatever God despises, his church ought to despise. Yet whatever God loves, his church ought to also love. Whatever God restores, his church ought to restore. And whatever God reconciles, his church ought to reconcile. Can I get a witness? Oh yes, I want to remind you today. Although in 1822 Archibald Grimke wrote and Martin Luther King Jr. paraphrased him. And I want to remind you, even today, as they said, right shall not remain upon the scaffold, while wrong sits upon the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. Oh yes, somebody needs to hear today that God will take care of his own. And God will take care of you. By instinct, birds know the times and the seasons. When to fly south and when to return home in the spring. They instinct when to mate and when to produce little ones. But God's people in Jeremiah's indictments from God had no regard for instinct or revelation and traveled the path that leads to death. Oh, my brothers and my sisters, our instincts and revelations from God, from walking on the path of faith, ought to tell you which road to take and where it's going to take you. Oh yes, your instincts and revelations from trusting God for His holiness and for your happiness ought to tell you which hill you ought to climb or which hill you ought to hike and where it will lead you. Your instincts and revelations from walking in the pathway of duty ought to tell you which mountain you must climb and how much strength you need to reach the pinnacle of your own journey. In other words, my brothers and my sisters, you ought to know what God's power has delivered you from. And you ought to know where His grace and His mercy has brought you to. For one thing I'm glad about today is that grace and mercy are also divine manifestations. They're also instruments of our Almighty God. For even Jeremiah inserted grace in the context of his indictments when he quoted God in Jeremiah 7 and 5. He says, "For if you truly amend your ways and your doings, if you truly act justly one with another, if you do not oppress the alien, that is the stranger, and the orphan and the widow, or shed innocent blood in this place, then I will dwell with you in this place, in the land that I gave of old to your ancestors forever and forever." You even hear the chronicler who wrote in his second chapter, verse 7 and 14, many of you quote it by heart, when it says, "If my people call by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and then turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven. I'll then forgive their sin. Oh yes, and then I will heal the land." Oh yes, in conclusion, brothers and sisters, our text presents several rhetorical questions with life-changing implications. Oh yes, in our text of chapter 8, verse 22, raises some rhetorical questions. Is there a source of healing available? Is the question being raised? Saying, is there balm in Gilead? And the historical context in which he wrote these extraordinary and eternal words understood that there was plenty of balm available in Gilead. And so the emphasis here, by raising the question and receiving the answer yes, is that there is healing. There is wholeness. There is somebodyness in this walk with our God who's able to meet us where we are. Second of all, he says there is a physician who's always on call. That rhetorical question again, is there not a physician in Gilead? and the historical context would come back with a resounding answer. Yes, there is a physician there. Yes, there's a physician there who also can bring you health and wholeness. And I want you to know today that there's always a physician to meet you where you are. Oh, I thank God today, like the text implies, that our God is omnipresent, which means he's everywhere at the same time. He's big enough to take care of my healing here in Baton Rouge and Baker. He's big enough to take care of Sister Stark's concerns over in Arizona. He's big enough to take care of my cousins down in Atlanta, Georgia. He's big enough to hear the cry of my brother in Chicago. He's omnipresent. And because he's omnipresent, we know he meets you where you are right now. Not only is he omnipresent, but I'm thanking God that he's also omnipotent, which means he's all powerful. He's also omniscient, which means he's all knowing. And that's why I love David in his Psalm 139 when he talks about God knows his uprising and his down sitting. That God knows when he gets up and when he goes to bed at night. David talked about this knowledge of God, and then David says, it's too wonderful for me. I can't handle the idea that he knows everything. But oh, I'm here to tell you today that he also knows how much you can bear. Can I get a witness? Oh yes, there is a source of healing available. Secondly, there is a physician who's always on call. But I also want to tell you that you can start anew right now. You can start anew with spiritual healing, spiritual wellness, spiritual wholeness. In fact, you got to seek healing in the right place and from the right source. Let me say that again. You got to make sure that you seek your spiritual healing, yes, in the right place and from the right source. Oh yeah, that reminds me of the story about the old woman who bought a brand new refrigerator. And oh God, she was just so happy that she could get that brand new refrigerator and her 5 children can go back and forth and get the food that they needed, for she was also blessed to fill it up with all kinds of food. She just filled that refrigerator to its capacity and just celebrating the fact of how blessed she was. And days passed, and something began to have an odor in the house. And she smelled that odor, and it led her to her kitchen. And she opened up the refrigerator and realized that everything, all her money that she had put in that food and that she had put in that refrigerator had all spoiled. All of her food was destroyed. And oh, she got mad. She got arrogant. She got on that phone and she called that Sears Roebuck man, say, you better come on out here and fix my cold spot refrigerator. I spent all my hard-earned money trying to feed my children. I don't care if it is Sunday. You need to come out of here right now. And those in my community know, she didn't say right now, she said right now. Come on out here right now and fix this refrigerator. Well, about an hour later, here comes a repairman. Knocks on the door, and he enters, and he goes into the kitchen. And the first thing that he did was that he looked to see if the woman had plugged it in to the socket. For she had forgot to plug it in to the life-giving source. And so everything she put in that refrigerator, all of her money, all of her effort was all gone because she failed to plug it in. And that's what I want to leave you with today. That life don't begin. Life don't happen until you get plugged in to the life-giving source. Until you realize that there is balm in Gilead. That there is a physician who can meet you where you are. Because you can put all that you think you need in your life, your power, your prestige, your privilege, your friends, your money, but if you're not plugged into the life-giving source, all of that can go down in flames. Can I get a witness? But there are some results for when you are spiritually healthy. That's when you can deal with all your other ailments. When you're spiritually healthy, you can deal with your physical issues, your emotional problems, your social, your economic, your financial, and even your relational issues. All can be dealt with when you have spiritual healing. And he'll give you power, my brothers and my sisters. Yeah, to face your day-to-day challenges. It'll help us to get through these critical and challenging and crushing times. Oh yes, there is balm in Gilead. His name is Jesus. He's the one who provides the spiritual healing. He's a healer in a class all by himself. And that's why I can say today, without a shadow of a doubt, knowing that there's spiritual healing in my life, that there's spiritual healing available to those who seek him through many dangers, toils, and snares. I have already come this year. 'Tis grace that brought me safe this far. And grace will lead me home. Somebody can join me and say 'twas grace that taught my heart to fear. And grace my fears relieved. Oh, how precious did that grace appear. The hour, the minute, the moment I first believed. Somebody else can join me and Andre Crouch by saying I've had many tears and sorrows. I've even had questions for tomorrow. And there have been times I didn't know right from wrong. But in every situation, God gave me blessed consolation. And that my trials come only to make me strong. Can you join me today by saying through it all, I've learned and I'm learning to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. Through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust him as my doctor. I've learned to trust him as my company keeper. Is there anybody who can agree with me that he'll meet you where you are? Through it all, learn Learn to trust in Jesus. Learn how to get your spiritual healing. Amen. Amen. And amen. Let us pray. Thank you, Holy God, that there is spiritual healing that's available to all who believe. Thank you, God, that you're big enough, that you're wise enough, that you're strong enough to meet us where we are in our time of need. I need for deliverance. I need for wholeness. I need for justice. I need for somebodyness. I need for reconciliation. I need for the reclamation of our spiritual and our nation's values. God, we need you to show up now, to bring us to the place where we need to be in terms of recognizing that all of our help begins and comes from you. And so make us better, make us wiser, make us stronger, make us more resilient, make us more understanding, make us more appreciative of the differences that you made in every creation of yours. Help us, God, to give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray, and for his sake, amen and amen. Oh, my brothers and my sisters, the prayers of the righteous availeth much. So keep on praying, keep on planning, but keep on persevering. And I remind you, like one of my former pastors, the Reverend Floyd Preston Piper, used to say, repeat after me. I'm not many, but I am one. I can't do all things, but I can do some. And that I can do, God expects me to. My Lord. And remember, don't let the devil steal your joy.